In every abandoned theater, something still performs. A ghost in a torn gown still walks the aisles. A cursed orchestra plays beneath the floor. And a tall man waits behind the curtain, watching. They never left. And now, they're waiting for you to take the stage. I don't know why I agreed to clean the old Briarwood Theater that night. Maybe because I needed the money. Maybe because I've always been stupidly curious. Or maybe, looking back now, it called to me. Places like that don't stay empty for 30 years without swallowing a few souls. I should have known. I should have listened to the way the wind howled through the cracked windows like someone whispering, "Don't go in." But I went in anyway. The theater sat at the end of a dead street, its sign broken, its once bright letters dangling by rusted screws. My flashlight beam shook as I pushed the heavy doors open. A wave of cold air rushed out, thick with dust and something sour, like old perfume mixed with rot. Inside, the lobby looked frozen in time. Posters of faded movies hung crookedly on the walls. A ticket booth stood cracked, its glass smeared with fingerprints from decades ago. The red carpet, once luxurious, was now threadbare and moldy. I told myself it was just an empty building, but the moment I stepped inside, I felt watched. My boss, Mr. Harrow, had warned me not to go into the auditorium. "Just the lobby and hallways," he said. "The main hall is unstable." He hesitated on that last word, like he wanted to say something else, something truer, something worse. But curiosity dragged me deeper. As I swept the lobby floor, I kept hearing soft footsteps behind me. Every time I turned, no one was there. I ignored it at first, humming to keep myself calm, but the humming only echoed back at me, too loudly, too closely, as if someone was humming along from right behind my shoulder. When I moved to the hallway that led to the dressing rooms, the air grew colder. My breath fogged out in front of me. The floor creaked under my boots, and the walls seemed to groan like they were remembering pain. Halfway through mopping, I saw something that made my skin crawl. A light flickered inside dressing room 3. There was no power in the building. I stood there, staring at the cracked door, watching a dim yellow glow pulse like a heartbeat. I knew I should run. Every instinct screamed at me to leave, but something tugged at my mind, an invisible hand pulling me closer. I pushed the door open. The mirror lights were on, glowing weakly. And in the dust-covered vanity chair sat a woman in a long, tattered performance gown. Her hair hung over her face, dark and stringy. She didn't move, didn't breathe. My throat tightened. "Ma'am?" I whispered. Are you okay?" Her head snapped up. Her face was white powder, smeared like melted wax. Her eyes were hollow black holes, and her mouth stretched too wide, splitting the corners of her lips. She leaned forward, fingers clawing the air. "You're late," she croaked, her voice scraping like metal on metal. "The show must go on." I stumbled back, crashing into the hallway wall. The lights blinked out, plunging everything into darkness. Then I heard it. Footsteps, dozens of them. They shuffled from the auditorium, from the lobby, from behind me, from inside the walls. The whole theater had woken up. I ran. I didn't care where. I just ran. My flashlight flickered wildly, barely lighting the path. As I reached the auditorium doors, they swung open on their own, groaning loudly. Something forced me inside. The auditorium was pitch black except for the stage, which glowed with a faint blue light. Rows of seats were filled, not with people but with silhouettes. Shadowy outlines of men, women, children, all sitting perfectly still, all facing the stage. My chest tightened so hard I could barely breathe. I turned to leave, but the doors slammed shut behind me. "Audience is seated," a voice whispered from the darkness. "Begin." A spotlight clicked on, blinding me. When my eyes adjusted, I saw her again, the woman from the dressing room, standing on stage. She raised a trembling hand, pointing straight at me. "Our final performer has arrived." The audience turned their heads toward me in perfect unison, one slow, bone-grinding motion. Their faces slid into the light, eyes hollow, jaws slack, skin sagging like melted clay. They began to clap, slow, wrong, offbeat. The woman on stage smiled, revealing too many teeth. "Join us," she whispered. "We've been waiting for a new star." I backed away, shaking my head. My heart hammered so violently I tasted blood. "No," I choked out. I don't belong here." She stepped toward the edge of the stage, her movements jerky and puppet-like. "Everyone belongs to the theater," she hissed. "Once you enter, you never leave." The audience began to rise from their seats. Their bodies made cracking, popping sounds like old wood. They moved toward me with slow, dragging steps. I bolted. My shoulder slammed into the exit doors. They didn't budge. I pounded them until my knuckles split. The audience closed in, whispering in voices layered on top of one another. Stay, stay, stay. I saw a side door near the curtains and sprinted toward it. I didn't look back. I didn't breathe. I threw myself through the door, stumbled into a storage hallway, and kept running until I found the stage loading dock. A weak exit sign flickered above a rusted metal door. When I pushed it open, cold night air slammed into my face. I ran until Briarwood Theater was nothing but a black silhouette behind me. I should have been safe. But as I reached the streetlight, I heard the woman's voice again. Soft, close, inside my ear. Break a leg, Star. I haven't slept since. Every night I hear clapping from outside my window. Slow? Wrong. Calling me back for the final show. And I know one thing now. The theater doesn't forget its performers. I never believed music could hurt someone. I never believed sound alone could twist the mind, bend the bones, or drag a person into madness. But that was before I stepped into the abandoned Delmont Theater, the place everyone in town called the Pit. I went there to record sound samples for an indie horror game I was working on. Creaking wood, big, empty acoustics. Perfect for atmosphere. I thought the creepy stories were just superstition. People said anyone who listened too long inside the theater began to hear things. Things that weren't their own thoughts. I should have listened. The moment I entered, an unnatural silence hit me. It wasn't the normal kind of quiet. It felt too thick, too heavy, like the air itself was holding its breath. My recording equipment hummed softly, almost relieved to break the dead air. The auditorium was massive, with hundreds of empty seats. The stage curtain hung torn, swaying slightly though there was no breeze. My eyes drifted to the orchestra pit, a deep, wide hole filled with shadows. It felt wrong, like a mouth waiting to swallow someone whole. I climbed down into it to get the best sound resonance. The temperature dropped instantly. I hit record and tapped a metal stand lightly. The sound didn't echo normally. Instead, it stretched, warped, like something underneath the floor hummed along with it. A vibration crawled up my legs, through my chest, straight into my head. My heart skipped. I tried again, another tap, another warped echo, this time mixed with something else. A low moan. I froze. It came from beneath me. I knelt, holding the microphone close to the wooden floorboards of the pit. My hands trembled as the moan grew louder, clearer, almost human. Help! I jerked back so fast I slipped and nearly fell. My breath shook out in white fog. What the hell? I whispered. The floor vibrated again, stronger this time, like knuckles rapping from below. Something was under there, something alive. I backed toward the ladder, but the lights above flickered violently, buzzing like angry bees. Then the old speakers on the walls crackled, and music started playing. Not beautiful music, not anything human. It was a mangled symphony. Off-key violins screeching, brass horns wheezing like dying breaths, drums pounding like fists against a coffin lid. The sound filled the theater, shaking dust from the ceiling, vibrating inside my skull. My equipment recorded everything, the mic almost screaming with distortion. I clamped my hands over my ears, but it didn't help. The music wasn't just in the air, it was inside me, rattling my bones. I staggered toward the ladder, but as I climbed, something caught my ankle. A pale hand. It pushed out between two floorboards, fingers long, joints bent the wrong way. Another hand appeared beside it, then another, clawing upward desperately. I kicked free, scrambling up the ladder. The hands reached after me, dozens of them now, white, thin, trembling like they belonged to people who hadn't seen daylight in years. I made it onto the stage, panting, but the music only grew louder. The speakers shook violently, and the torn curtain behind me rippled as though something enormous was moving behind it. Then I heard voices, hundreds of them, whispering the same phrase in rhythm with the music. Join the symphony, join the symphony. The stage floor bulged upward, boards snapping. Figures crawled out, pale bodies twisted in unnatural ways, eyes hollow, mouths stitched shut with black thread. They moved like broken marionettes, jerking toward me. I ran through the backstage corridor, tripping over ropes and props. The whispers chased me, echoing in the narrow hallway. Join us, join us. I burst out through a side exit into the alley behind the theater. The door slammed shut behind me so hard the frame cracked. The music stopped instantly. The night air was freezing and impossibly still. I ran all the way home. When I played back the audio later, every second was corrupted, static, distortion, screeching. Except for one part. One whisper that stood out perfectly clear at the end. Come back, the symphony is waiting. I deleted the files, but the music hasn't left my head. Sometimes late at night I hear it again, soft at first, then growing louder. And every time, I feel that same vibration crawling through my bones. I know what it means. The orchestra pit hasn't forgotten me, and someday, it will finish its song. I never believed the stories about the abandoned Rialto Theater. Kids in my neighborhood always whispered about something called the man behind the curtain, a figure they swore showed up whenever someone pulled the red velvet curtains on stage. They said he wasn't human. They said he didn't like to be disturbed. I laughed it off. But when my photography professor gave me an assignment on urban decay, the Rialto was the first place I thought of. It sounded perfect. Creepy, quiet, untouched for decades. I thought I would just take a few pictures and leave. I was very, very wrong. The moment I stepped inside, the air felt heavier. It wasn't just dust. It was like the building was holding something in, or maybe holding something together. My flashlight beam shook slightly as I walked down the aisle. Old seats creaked, the floor groaned, and somewhere in the distance, something dripped steadily. The stage looked massive up close, torn curtains hanging like shredded flesh. The color had faded, but under the dust I could still see hints of deep crimson. They almost looked wet. I lifted my camera and snapped a few shots. The first photo made my stomach drop. There was a figure standing behind the curtain, tall, thin, facing the stage. I lowered the camera. Nothing was there. I lifted it again. The figure was back, and this time, it was closer. My fingers trembled. I told myself it was dust, or shadows, or my nerves. I moved closer to the stage anyway, because curiosity is a disease I can't seem to cure. The steps creaked loudly as I climbed onto the platform. I could hear my heartbeat echoing in my ears. The curtain swayed gently, even though there wasn't the slightest breeze. "Is anyone here?" I called out. No answer, but something moved behind the curtain. Not footsteps, more like dragging, like someone pulling something heavy across the floor. I swallowed hard and stupidly grabbed the curtain's edge. The theater seemed to exhale. I pulled. Nothing, just darkness, empty backstage space. I laughed nervously, almost proud of myself for being brave. Then something icy wrapped around my wrist. I yelped and yanked my hand away, stumbling back. My flashlight flew out of my grip and rolled across the stage. I scrambled after it, but froze when I saw the curtain ripple, like fingers pressing through from the other side. No breeze, no animals. Something was pushing. The folds of the curtain bulged slowly, revealing the outline of a tall figure behind it. Shoulders, arms, a head tilted unnaturally to one side. Then a voice drifted out, soft and humming. "Why pull the curtain if you don't want to see the show?" My blood turned ice. I backed away as the curtain parted on its own, opening slowly like a mouth, and behind it stood nothing, just darkness. But the voice came again, right behind my ear. "Stay, the show is about to begin." I spun around, no one. My heartbeat thundered. I ran to the stairs, but the door at the back of the theater slammed shut on its own, the sound cracking like a gunshot. The lights flickered, though there should have been no power. Every seat in the auditorium creaked as though someone was sitting in them. I turned slowly. Row by row, shadowy figures materialized in the seats. Not ghosts, not fully human either, just silhouettes with hollow faces and long, thin limbs. They all stared at me without eyes. A spotlight snapped on, blinding me for a moment. When it dimmed, I found myself in the center of the stage. The curtain closed behind me, fast like a trap. Then a tall shape rose from the floorboards themselves, like a shadow peeling itself off the wood. It stretched upward until it stood nearly 7 feet tall. Its head bent at an unnatural angle, matching what I'd seen in my camera earlier. "You pulled the curtain," it whispered, voice echoing unnaturally. "Now you must finish the performance." "I don't want to be here," I managed to choke out. It leaned close, face inches from mine. I couldn't see features, only darkness. "You were chosen." The audience of shadows began to clap, slow, rhythmic, wrong. The figure extended its long hand toward me. "Take your bow." I bolted. I ran off the stage, through the side corridor, stumbling over ropes and broken props. The shadows chased me, their footsteps silent but fast. The tall figure's whispers slithered through the hall. "You cannot leave. The curtain rises for you." I slammed into a rusted exit door and shoved with everything I had. This time, it burst open. I stumbled into the alley behind the theater, gasping for air. When I turned back, the door slowly swung shut without a sound. I never went back for my equipment. But here's the part that keeps me awake at night. When I reviewed the photos on my backup storage a week later, I found one last image, one I don't remember taking. It was me standing on stage. Spotlight on me, audience full, curtain behind me wide open, and behind the curtain, the tall figure was standing directly behind me, one hand on my shoulder. The caption under the photo read, "Opening Act,